When Elias Carter woke up that morning, he expected it to be another routine day on the farm, just tending to the soil, working hard, and embracing the simple life he had always cherished. However, little did he know that this particular day would push him in ways he never anticipated, revealing not only the incredible strength of his spirit, but the unbreakable power of family. As Elias carried on with his daily tasks, he noticed something that didn't sit right. Two officers lingered near the edge of his property, watching him closely as he moved about. Their intentions were far from friendly. What began as a seemingly innocent display of authority quickly spiraled into a sinister confrontation fueled by prejudice and greed. This is the story of Elias, one marked by courage, determination, and resilience. Despite the challenges he faced, especially due to the color of his skin, Elias was no ordinary farmer. Beneath his humble appearance was a legacy of family strength and influence, strength that would soon make itself known, shocking not only his oppressors, but the entire town. His journey is one of perseverance and the fight for justice. Before we dive deeper into Elias's powerful story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're ready to be inspired, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The morning sun stretched long shadows across Elias's farm as he methodically worked through his routine. At 76 years old, his pace had slowed, but his hands remained as steady as ever. Decades of labor had etched their mark on him, his skin weathered by the elements, his hair now silvery and closely cropped. He knelt beside a row of young corn, brushing his fingers gently across the tender leaves. "You're looking good this year," he muttered to himself, a quiet satisfaction settling in his voice. His farm wasn't vast by modern standards, but every inch of its 25 acres was treated with love and care. The rows of crops were immaculate, the fences sturdy, and the red barn freshly painted. His modest white farmhouse sat at the end of a dusty dirt driveway, its porch always swept clean, despite the persistent Georgia red clay. This land, passed down through 3 generations, was bought by his grandfather after emancipation, and Elias felt that legacy with each step he took across the fields. Later that morning, Elias climbed into his well-kept pickup truck and drove into town for supplies. As he pulled up to Carson's general store, the bell above the door jingled cheerfully. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." James Carson, the young shopkeeper, called out. "How are those watermelons coming along?" Elias gave a rare, soft smile. "Coming along fine. Should have the first batch ready in a couple of weeks." James responded warmly. "Mom'll be glad to hear that. No one's watermelons compare to yours, Mr. Carter." As Elias collected his supplies, he noticed the subtle but unmistakable ways people interacted with him. Some, like Mrs. Harrison, a retired teacher, greeted him with a polite nod. Others, like Bill Whitaker and his teenage son, avoided his gaze, taking care to distance themselves as he approached. These small moments of quiet discomfort revealed the unspoken racial dynamics in their small town. "Don't mind them, Mr. Carter," James said softly as he rang up Elias's purchases. "Some folks just can't move with the times." Elias replied with a weary smile. "Been that way all my life, son. Some things change slower than others." As he drove home, Elias glanced at a photograph tucked into his dashboard. A younger version of himself standing proudly beside his son, Marcus, at his FBI Academy graduation. Marcus had risen far from the curious boy who once followed Elias around the farm, asking endless questions. Elias's chest swelled with pride at the thought of his son's achievements, though he seldom spoke of them. Drawing attention to such success, especially as a black man in a small southern town, often invited trouble. Just as Elias's thoughts turned to his son, red and blue lights suddenly flashed in his rearview mirror. His grip on the steering wheel tightened as his heart raced. 2 officers approached, Miller, stocky with short blonde hair, and Tucker, tall and lean, always sporting a permanent scowl. "Good morning, officers. Is there a problem?" Elias asked, keeping his hands visible on the wheel. "License and registration," Miller barked, as Elias reached for his documents. "Your taillight's out," Tucker added, his tone accusatory. "With all due respect, officer, I checked my lights yesterday. They were working fine," Elias replied, trying to stay calm. Miller's tone turned sharp. You calling my partner a liar?
No, sir.
I'm just stating a fact, Elias said, his voice steady. Step out of the vehicle, Miller ordered. Elias complied, moving carefully as the officers began an unnecessarily thorough inspection of his truck. Their intentions were clear: harassment. Passers-by slowed down, noticing the scene of an elderly man being harassed on the side of the road. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Tucker said with a mocking tone, Well, would you look at that? Your tail lights are working now. Must have been a loose connection. You're lucky this time, Miller added, smirking as he handed Elias back his documents. Better keep everything in order, Mr. Carter. Never know when we might stop by again. Elias waited until they drove off, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. Back at the farm, he tried to shake off the encounter by immersing himself in his work, but the unease still lingered. As the sun set, Elias stood at the edge of his fields, the orange and purple hues of the sky usually bringing him peace, but today they only deepened his anxiety. He thought about his hands that had toiled on this land for decades, hands that had raised a son to fight for justice. Yet, these very hands trembled under the weight of the officer's veiled threats. Walking back toward his house, Elias whispered into the darkness, Lord, give me strength. Unbeknownst to Elias, Miller and Tucker were already plotting their next move from the comfort of their patrol car. You see how well-maintained everything is, Miller said with a grin. Bet he's sitting on a nice pile of cash. Tucker nodded, his eyes narrowed. People like him don't trust banks. Probably has money stashed all over that property. Their dark laughter filled the car as they schemed their next steps, planning another inspection, this time with demands for payment. The following day, they arrived unannounced while Elias was tending to his tomatoes. They claimed to be conducting a property inspection, citing supposed complaints about safety violations. Over the next hour, they fabricated a long list of issues, each accompanied by thinly veiled threats. This could mean serious trouble for you, Tucker said ominously. Unless, of course, you handle it unofficially, $2,000 should cover it. Elias's stomach churned. This was money he had been saving for new irrigation equipment, but he handed it over, drained and defeated. But the harassment didn't end there. Week after week, they returned with new demands, slowly draining his savings and his spirit. His farm, once a symbol of pride, began to show signs of neglect, and even his prized crops started to suffer. Finally, unable to endure it any longer, Elias turned to his son, Marcus. Outraged, Marcus vowed to take action. He contacted the FBI and initiated a full investigation. Before long, the corruption of Miller and Tucker unraveled, exposing years of extortion aimed at vulnerable members of the community. The story reached its dramatic climax when the officers returned to the farm. This time, Marcus was there, backed by a team of federal agents. The officers were arrested on the spot, and the truth of their crimes sent shockwaves through the town, sparking a wave of solidarity and reform. 3 months later, Elias's farm had become a beacon of hope. Volunteers helped restore the land, and the community, once divided, began to come together to rebuild. Marcus's efforts led to systemic change, ensuring justice and equality for future generations. Elias Carter's story stands as a testament to resilience, the power of family, and the unyielding strength that comes from standing together. As the Georgia sun set over his fields, Elias knew that his legacy of justice, unity, and courage would endure, passed down through generations.